Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on your Thursday. We are really excited about our show this morning as we continue moving to our new time slot, 8 to 9 a.m. Central, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully, we continue to have the interaction in the chat like we had with this kickoff of this new time frame for our show that we've had so far this week. We've really appreciated it. Gotten some good feedback as well on the switch from the 7 a.m. Central Time slot. We're now, again, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, talking all things ACC, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Please hit that subscribe button to All Access AM if you like what you watch or just want to support another ACC podcast. Is what we are. So we have a jam-packed show for you guys tonight or this morning. We have James Fletcher joining us at 8:20 a.m. Central Time. We have Alexis Cubit, who covers Louisville, to join us at 8:40 a.m. Central Time. So we will get the breakdown on ACC Bracketology, and then we'll move into some talk around Louisville. One of the best off seasons in college football is the Louisville Cardinals. Alexis will join us at 8:40 to break that down. All the surrounding noise around Jeff Brohm and what was he going to do as far as a contract or returning to Louisville. He was in the mix for some jobs. Name was mentioned a lot. Well, guess what? They went out and crushed the portal. They're one of the favorites to land in Charlotte this fall in the 2026 season. We'll talk with Alexis about that. What did we say? I feel like you're talking to your child. What did we say about doing X? What did we say? We're getting in trouble here. We're trying to reason with them a little bit. Hey, what did we say? Well, what did we say? Wednesday night, we're gonna have a nice, quiet night in ACC hoops. 2 games on the slate, 2 heavy favorites going on the road. Guess what? Clemson decided to say, you know what? We're going to drop a game at Wake Forest. And kudos to UVA for getting a win, very comfortable win at Georgia Tech. But Clemson said, you know what? We're going to go down at the half at Wake, and we are going to lose by 8 to the Demon Deacons, who are sitting in the bottom half of this league. Now we have even more chaos at the top of the ACC standings. We'll talk with James Fletcher about what that means for bracketology, if at all, because that Wake Forest loss, again, on the road, so you're in kind of good shape there, but nonetheless, a not devastating one, but one that really puts Clemson behind the 8 ball in a sense of there's really very little room for error now if you're trying to be a top 4 seed. You know, they're sitting there on the outside looking in technically with Duke, Virginia, Miami, NC State, and Clemson. That is the order. So you've got some work to do to secure your top 4 spot now if you're Clemson, rather than going to not necessarily cruise by any means, but certainly thinking in my world that you were going to go into Wake Forest and get an easy win. We'll talk about that and what it means for, again, bracketology and of course the ACC tournament standings and where that stands. And that's going to be a fun battle down the stretch to see how those all play out here in the coming days and weeks as we get closer and closer to that. And we appreciate you guys being here and as we continue on with our ACC coverage. So appreciate Jerry Morphew for chiming in the chat. I am back, Jerry. We are too. We're glad to have you here. So appreciate you chiming in on the chat, and we appreciate all of you guys who have supported our sponsors throughout the year. And when you look at some of these sponsors that we have, they're really designed to obviously help you out, provide you a service or give you some good in your life. Well, I think as ACC fans, and for those who don't know, I cover SMU on a day-to-day basis. That's what I do. I started this ACC podcast because this was something that I really wanted to do and bring to the conference, to kind of bring as an offering of sorts. Well, I am saying from the SMU standpoint that they call the SMU band the best dressed band in the land. Well, why don't you be the best dressed fan in the land and go to our friends at Horn Legend and go browse their selection? Whether you're a Tar Heel, you need to be looking good right now because you're not feeling good maybe without Visar and Caleb Wilson, go check out their collection. Miami fans, you guys just went to a national championship. Go check out their collection. Start building up your game day wardrobe for the college football season. There's no better time to start now. That way you don't get hit with the massive bill over the course of that first few weeks of college football season. Go ahead, grab all their gear now at Horn Legend. And again, just high quality stuff that you can count on for football season, whether it be polos, pullovers, jackets, all of those things. They've got you covered there in the Horn Legend store. They continue to add more and more selections for all of our friends in the ACC. So go to hornlegend.com to browse their selection. We appreciate all of you guys who shop Horn Legend these days. We have a few minutes before we get with James Fletcher, and I kind of wanted to take a little bit of the temperature of ACC hot seats. And truthfully, this is a league that really sits in good shape in a sense outside of, let's just say, one or two schools in particular. And so let's focus on those. This is a good sign of the health of the league in terms of competitiveness, because one thing we can sit here and say is, okay, we might look ahead at the end of 2026 and we'll see some coaches from this league pop back up in job searches. You know, Manny Diaz was thrown around a little bit in terms of Duke, leaving Duke and going to Penn State for a bit. Jeff Brohm was mentioned around the Michigan search and some of those other searches. You know, the buzz around some of these programs that hired coaches, those are done. Those are taken care of. But you look at the hot seat list, and I was trying to even talk myself into a couple, and man, I would say there's 3 levels to this hot seat conversation, and there are 3 schools to this hot seat conversation. So here's my take on it as we sit here in the middle of February talking about who could be at the end of their rope here for the 2026 season and beyond at their current program. And man, you go down the list, right? Virginia, Duke, Miami, Georgia Tech, SMU, Louisville, Wake Forest, NC State, Cal, Clemson, Stanford, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Syracuse. You look to be in pretty good shape there. That was a list of all the schools that I feel like aren't in a situation where they could even remotely be considering moving on from their coach. And I mentioned North Carolina because we went through an offseason and Bill Belichick's still there. And I think that's important to note. And North Carolina's paying him a bunch of money. I think the only way Bill Belichick leaves Chapel Hill is if he does it on his own. He says, this isn't what I want to do anymore. We're going to go ahead and leave. This is maybe a bad idea. We appreciate it. UNC, we're going to move on. I really think there are 3 coaches that you could sit here and say are truly on the hot seat. And then I'll give you one sleeper. When you see what Florida State is right now, we know Mike Norvell's seat. He's got the reddest seat. I mean, it's so red that it's really just, I mean, it might as well be already on fire in certain spots, and he's kind of spraying the hose a little bit on certain areas to kind of cool it off as best he can, but he can't keep up right now. He's got a new offensive coordinator. It's him basically. And you have another turnover through the offseason and the roster where you hire a new GM in John Garrett, who the school really pushed for to create a new structure as far as how you go after players and how you build your roster and how you do all those things. And so your seat is hot. They just don't have the money or didn't have the necessarily the stomach to pay that money for you to go away. 2 years removed from a really elite season, and you just almost got back to bowl eligibility. So maybe let's say Florida State gives him the benefit of the doubt this year, which they did. You go after a bowl season again and getting Florida State back to postseason play. That would be the continued build and evolution of a program that did not adapt well with some of the changes of NIL in terms of, okay, here's how we build the roster. Here's how we negotiate rev share. Here's how we do this. Here's how we do that. Their highly touted recruits are, for the most part, all jumping ship that have signed with the program, and they're entering the portal. We saw some of those highly touted players from past classes leave. They're taking a new approach now with John Garrett at the helm. And who knows? I don't know if we'll see the full the full transformation this year, I am of the belief that with John Garrett and their new staff that they're building out there in Tallahassee, that they are obviously going to be there with whoever the next coach is. That's going to be the structure. That's going to be the new identity as far as how they do things from a building the roster perspective. But with Mike Norvell, maybe it turns the corner enough where you get back to bowl eligibility. And then you say, okay, maybe Mike Norvell can call some plays. They were good on offense this year. They put things together in certain areas. They just need the roster to be fixed. And that's why they did a good job of going out and hiring somebody who could do that. That all could happen. But make no mistake, Mike Norvell's seat is incredibly hot. It starts out with a major game against SMU to open league play. They'll, of course, open against New Mexico the week prior in week 0. But if they lose that SMU game, that will be a major, arrow right to the chest right off the bat of Mike Norvell. He's going to come out of that game battered and beaten, and he's going to have to find a way to circle the wagons and get Renegade rolling again as they will navigate this ACC schedule and trying to find ways to get them to bowl eligibility. If they get back to bowl eligibility, I kind of lean that he'll be safe, even if that means 7-5. I think 6-6, depending on what it looks like, would maybe be something that they move on from. But I really think his seat is hot. They just, I think, monetarily are having a tough time stomaching the decision. You move on to another school that I think the seat is hot, and this is really because I think it just has bottomed out last year. And whenever you bottom out, you've got to find a way to rebound. And this is what got Mike Norvell's seat kind of hot. Bill O'Brien at Boston College. And I do think Boston College is another example of, do they have the money? Do they have the stomach to make a decision after this year if BC is still bottomed out? That would be a question that I would have going into this. But man, Bill O'Brien and just the way that I think they've managed the quarterback position, and I know they aren't investing nearly what they need to. They are maybe making a change. We'll see what that looks like. I am not of the belief that they are making that kind of a change and really committing to it just yet. But I can see a world where it's another example of FSU, but at a smaller level, where they're at a slow build. They are looking at ways to try and fix this program. It is a slower process because they don't have the resources of some of these programs. And Bill O'Brien's got to go out there and kind of beat feet on the fundraising path to try and make things happen in that respect. But I still think his seat is hot because of how much it bottomed out this year. And if they bottom out again, I think Boston College, like if you really want a kind of crazy off the wall opinion here, Boston College really has to be careful of the long-term future of their athletics program, because that is a program that, man, you can stick them in the Big East if they really want to double down and find a way to be in that league basketball wise, which I don't know if they'd let them in, but I'm just saying this. They could be there, and you never ever want to drop from FBS to FCS, but there is just zero investment in that football program right now. And they have a long storied history. But when you look ahead to realignment, Boston College is one of those teams in those athletic departments that right now, they're not trying to play at a high level. They're from an investment perspective. And BC hockey, very elite as far as resources and what they do. And I mean, shoot, my dad played for Jerry York, legendary former BC coach, and who won national championships there. It's really cool to go to BC for me as a hockey fan and walk through those halls. But the football side of it, they are not putting that money up to be competitive, to be elite. And you have to really be careful, because when that next round of realignment comes, if there is a pooling of media rights, or if there is, the Super League idea gets thrown around, BC has to be careful. They will be left out if they continue at the rate they are as far as investment, because everything about that program right now reeks of, we're just in the club. We're happy to be here. We're trying to find something that works, but we're not willing to spend. It wasn't similar at all to Virginia Tech, But remember, Virginia Tech just had to have a little bit of a wake-up call here to get on board with the spending. And then my other hot seat candidate here is one that I think is really interesting. Dave Dorian, NC State. He's been there forever. It has been just kind of this very steady of like, oh, wow, look what they can do. Oh, wow, look what they did. Oh, wow, look what they did. Oh, wow, look what they did. Where you have these moments of look at what this program can be. And then they have embarrassing losses and, we can't take that next step to get to that 10-win type of season. And I think there is an argument to be made when you could go out and maybe hire a young offensive coordinator who would kind of maybe energize the program. And I don't always think that's the move. Like you have to really handpick that the right way. Like I think Will Stein at Kentucky can do this thing and at least do what Mike Stoops did there for a long time, for example, and just kind of have moments where they're okay with being relevant. Maybe they get some flash in a pan with some really good quarterback play, and they can punch above their weight class a little bit in the SEC. But when you look at NC State, man, they need it. Here's another off the wall kind of take. NC State is not Indiana. They're not that type of bottomed out that Indiana was. But if you want a program that should be looking for the next Curt Cignetti, it should be NC State. It should be a program that can do more with less. And then maybe you do more with that less and win big games and win 10 games. And then you see that outpouring of support where you can then get that thing firing on all cylinders. NC State is the team in the ACC that when all these schools make their next hire, NC State is the one that really should be looking for the next Curt Cignetti. Or if they're fine with grabbing a young offensive coordinator type of hire and trying to make a splash and energize the program, maybe that's the right time. Maybe that's the right move for them to, again, kind of energize this program again, because it has fallen on just, I think, apathy, probably the right term for that program as it stands. One other name that I think is a sleeper here, and some people will probably say, whoa, really? Others will say, okay, I could see it. I think Pitt and Pat Narduzzi are another one where just keep an eye on it. Look, they've started fast. They've been relevant. We've seen that move over and over again now with Pitt, where they've been able to start fast, but they don't finish. And last year in 2024, that was how it went. They started out red hot, and then they lost their final lost their final 6 games, and I think they lost their final 6. But they just completely cratered down the stretch. This year, kind of similar in a sense, except they made a move at quarterback, went on a run, got in the top 25, major game against Notre Dame, and fell, and then kind of limped the rest of the way in a sense. Outside of, I think, beating Georgia Tech, you're looking at a program that I just wonder after 11 years if they're going to sit there and say we're happy with where we are, depending on how 2026 goes. That's a major year for Pitt. Obviously, you'll have Mason Heinschel there as well, but I circle Pitt as one that maybe it would surprise some people. I don't think his seat is really hot, but I don't think he's untouchable either. That's kind of a sleeper one to watch. As we get to James Fletcher here, I do want to share 2 quick tidbits. ACC Media Days will be July 15th through the 17th in Charlotte, once again at the Hilton Uptown Charlotte. And so we'll be there. We'll have coverage of that. And then, of course, Georgia Tech, as we see some scheduling news, will open the season with Colorado on a Thursday night kickoff on September 3rd. So they will announce that game time and TV coverage later. But that is a quick news and notes there from around the ACC. Jerry Morphew, appreciate you. I believe the ACC grew in strength faster than any other P4 conference. It's an interesting point. I could see it. There are certainly, I think, some conversations to be had around what Cal and SMU are doing and what they brought to the league as a whole, going into, looking back on the last couple of years now of ACC play. Stanford has to help out a little bit there, though. Speaking of helping out, we always lean on our guy, James Fletcher, when it comes to bracketology. He is On3's expert in that matter. James, good morning. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, love coming on. Love talking some college basketball, and we've got plenty of movement on the bracket to talk about.
Let's start with Clemson at Wake Forest last night. And we had the Wednesday show, and we sat there and said, this needs to be a quiet night for the ACC. You need the favorites to go in and roll. UVA took care of business at Georgia Tech, but Clemson said, you know what? We're going to find ourselves down at the half, and we're not going to be able to pull out of this dive in Winston-Salem. And they fall 85-77. What'd you make of that game? As you know, Clemson now just on the outside of the top 4 in the ACC tournament. Where are they in bracketology? Do we have you, James? James is frozen. So James is frozen. We will get him back in just a moment. And as we get him back, I will run through some of the stats of this Clemson Wake Forest game. And here is where, you know, a lot of this kind of went wrong in a sense. 8 of 26 from beyond the arc for Clemson in this one. And Wake Forest was just hot or hot enough. 45% from beyond the arc, 10 of 22. They shot 55% from the field. This wasn't even a game where you're sitting there saying, wow, look at the turnovers, look at Wake Forest taking advantage of them, what have you. Evenly rebounded. Certainly a game that, you know, doesn't scream, oh wow, look at Wake taking advantage of an absolute dud from Clemson. Clemson just didn't shoot the ball that well as a whole. 46% from the field, but really that 3-point percentage was really poor as a whole in a sense. With Wake Forest shooting 45%, they just couldn't keep up, and that is what really cost them in that respect. And you know, when you look at what Wake Forest accomplished by, you know, getting that win, they move up a little bit. They're 14-12 as a whole, 5-8 in league play now, as their remaining schedule is at Virginia Tech, at Boston College, Syracuse, Virginia on the road, and then Cal. So kind of a gettable schedule. If you're Wake Forest, you could finish 4-1 down the stretch now. You know, tough one at Virginia Tech, who's, you know, kind of not reeling, but looking to bounce back after a tough one against Miami. But certainly you got to have a little bit more confidence now if you're Wake Forest getting that win. I think we have James Fletcher with us. Let's try this again, my friend. Are you there?
So trying to switch it up and get back on with you. Yeah, definitely. We're talking about Clemson. They're obviously on a 3-game losing streak, which is just brutal for them and for their case here for in the NCAA tournament. We'll see how they're able to bounce back, how they're able to kind of come down the stretch of this. And it's definitely a couple of speed lines, create their case, and build their resume for the tournament.
James, give us a call back. Hit the link that I sent you and give us a call back in just a moment. You're still a little, you know, we can't really hear you. So normally you're in good shape. So just give us a call back and I'll have my mug on the screen while we chat with you. So hit that link on your phone and don't do video, and let's see how that works out. And we'll try this one more time in just a second. James does have a really good breakdown of the stock up, stock down type of programs that we're looking at across college basketball right now. And for the ACC, they currently sit with Clemson, Duke, Louisville, NC State, North Carolina, SMU, and Virginia in the field. Miami, Virginia Tech on the bubble. Still, Miami on the bubble, with Cal with more to do. As we look at those teams, you know, as a whole, we see the ACC having a little bit of a stock up with what Miami's doing. Miami is pushing. It is incredible that they are kind of still in the bubble of a sense. That is what, you know, just makes this league so difficult as a whole to kind of look at. But when you see what they're doing, They're getting some big wins. They're making their push now in the tough portion of their league schedule, and they have won their last 4 games now as they currently sit 21-5, 10-3 overall. I think we have James. Let's try this one more time. James, are you there? So no, James. So we will circle out here, circle back. James is going to let me know when he's back, and we will see how it goes with that one more time before we have Alexis Cubit join us at 8:40. So talking through the bracketology here for the ACC and kind of where that stands. When you look at what Joe Lunardi has as well, as far as the last 4 in, he has currently UCLA, Santa Clara, TCU, San Diego State. The first 4 out are Missouri, Ohio State, New Mexico, and Cal. So that's a good nod to Cal in a sense. Cal has a lot of work to do, though. Their metrics don't necessarily line up that well for being in the NCAA tournament, but they are without a doubt a team that I think can beat a lot of teams in this league on any given night, so they can make their run. And then you get the next 4 out beyond that: VCU, Virginia Tech, Seton Hall, West Virginia. I think what Virginia Tech missed out on earlier this week against Miami was devastating for them in a sense. You need to be able to beat teams that are either on the bubble or in your zone. And I see James here. I see him moving. That is a good sign. I think we're good, James. Let's roll.
All right, we're ready to go here. Sorry for the internet troubles. No idea how everything just dropped off there. But yeah, I think are we still talking about Clemson? We're still talking about Clemson. All right.
Yes.
So,
yes. I was just going to start texting you and
right.
getting your thoughts. You're going to have to relay them.
Yeah, we'll figure it out somehow here. But yeah, Clemson on a 3-game losing streak, really brutal for their resume. As we come down the stretch of this season, they were a team that was continuing to climb early in conference play, now starting to drop the wrong way. It's cost them at least probably 2 seed lines to this point, this losing streak that they've been on. Obviously, it's big for Wake Forest because they're not a team that's completely out of the picture. We've seen with so much parity that the bubble is relatively weak, I would say, here in terms of the records that we're going to see get into the NCAA tournament. So Wake Forest is not just dead and buried at this point. Getting a win over a Clemson is something that can kind of propel them back up into the conversation, not quite into the next 4 out conversation, but on that peripheral, waiting to see if somebody else slips up and if they can continue to add to their resume. So there's 2 sides to this, but yeah, not a good night for Clemson, not a good week and a half really here for the Tigers as they've fallen on some hard times trying to get these results in the ACC.
I do want to give a nod to what Virginia did and went on the road and beat, a Georgia Tech team that's struggling 2-12 now in ACC play, 94-68. They dominate. What, trends are you seeing with the Hoos and just the way they've been able to continue to roll now 23-3 as a whole? You look up at their remaining schedule now, they get Miami at home, they get NC State at home, then they go at Duke, and then they finish with Wake Forest, Virginia Tech. You're sitting there saying, okay, real chance that, they could end up 2-3 out of that. They could end up with a few more wins. You could see Virginia down the stretch here going a bunch of different ways. What are you seeing from them on the court that gives you either confidence or concern that it would go well or go, let's say poorly for the Hoos?
Yeah, I've got a lot of confidence in this Virginia team to be consistent, if nothing else. Now, does that mean that they can beat the top-end teams in the ACC? I'm not quite sure, but I do know that they're going to go out there and they're going to play the same style of basketball. They seem to have a great understanding of Ryan Odom's system, which is really impressive in year 1 to have such just fluidity out there, to have these veteran European talents that you've brought in, that you've added into your rotation. They seem to just understand and fit right into the system. You brought in some really good transfers who have not clashed in any way in their style of play and how they fit together on the court. I think that it's just been really some expert roster building by Ryan Odom and that staff in year 1. A really, really good sign for this program moving forward as they really kind of make the most of all the avenues that you can build from. They have some returning talent on this roster. They've got some transfers who have come in, bring in some recruits, some overseas talent. All of the pools that you can pull from, they've pulled from them all, and they've really hit on finding a team that gels well and that meshes on the court and doesn't seem to have a lot of drama off the court as well. So I do have a lot of confidence in this team to go out there and produce consistent results. That's what they've done to this point all season. That's how they've gotten to this point where we're talking about them on Saturday as one of these teams that might be revealed in the top 16 by the selection committee when they give us their sort of month to go hint of where things stand. So really impressed by Virginia. Think that they're a program that is very much on the rise, and that could start as early as this season with a deep run.
UNC now getting into life without Caleb Wilson, and for the moment, life without Henry Visar. Visar trending the right way, according to Hubert Davis the other night on his radio show, said he's getting better day to day. He had an injury to his lower extremities, and then he also had the flu. So quite the time for Henry Visar. But what have you made of UNC and one, the projectability of how you're dealing with two, and in particular, one, Caleb Wilson's injury, of that with the NCAA tournament, and then of course, just their outlook down the stretch here?
Yeah, this is a team that really brutal timing for these injuries coming down the stretch of the season. A little bit of uncertainty on the exact timeline. Like you said, it seems like they're both trending towards being back at some point, but we don't exactly know when that's going to be. So it's hard to really pin down what to expect from them in these coming weeks without knowing at what point those guys are going to come back, because not only are they probably North Carolina's two best players to this point in the season, not only are they your 4 and 5 defensively, your big time athlete in Caleb Wilson, your kind of big interior presence in Henry Visar, they have really been the creators of offense as well. When you look at this team and the way that they've gotten their points, there has been some facilitation. It's revolved around where Henry Visar is on the court. You've also got Caleb Wilson, who has used his athleticism to get to spots on the floor, to create space for those guards. It hasn't been a lot of guard creation as we've gone through this season that has led to North Carolina's best offense. So it's going to be really fascinating to see, how do they create in the half court sets? How do they get into a new look offense? They're basically going to have to change the way that they score the basketball over these couple of weeks as they adjust and as they figure out what these guys can bring when they do come back, because there's talk about potentially Caleb Wilson with a cast. Well, that's a completely different player than Caleb Wilson, who has both arms healthy and ready to go. We've seen players do it. We've seen players come back and be able to make an impact. And I think he's a guy who definitely can do so. He's got the intensity, and he's got that just athletic presence that will give him an upper hand to be able to make that return. If he chooses to play with a cast on, that's something that's on the table, but he will not be the full version of himself, particularly in that creation aspect that I'm talking about on offense.
North Carolina gets a road trip at Syracuse this weekend, then Louisville, big game next week, Virginia Tech at home, Clemson at home, and then finishes up at Duke. How much does Seth Trimble have to continue to write his legacy here down the stretch and kind of keep them as best he can, 3-2 down the stretch at worst?
Yeah, this is a massive moment for him and for that entire guard room at North Carolina. I just talked about how really the 4 and 5 have done most of the creation of offense for this team. Well, the guards have been what, if you listen to North Carolina fans, there's questions about. That's what they want to know going down the stretch. Can they rely on these guards? Can these guards find some level of consistency? Well, if they can, this could even end up being some sort of strange blessing in disguise for this team entering March Madness, because if you can get these guards going, if you can get Kyan Evans to finally find some consistency, some real kind of role in this team, Seth Trimble to find just another step, another leap in, like you said, his legacy that he's leaving at North Carolina. If you can get that kind of production, add some elements to this offense that can be guard centered, that can take attention away from your two big stars on the inside, that is the type of thing that can make you more versatile and way more dangerous in a postseason format.
Louisville on the road at SMU earlier this week. SMU wins by 10 at home, granted, but still a major win for SMU as far as the resume. It seems like it kind of locks in their NCAA tournament bid, barring a meltdown here down the stretch. What did this win do for SMU at home this week? And Moody Coliseum was rocking. And, what are there concerns with Louisville down the stretch here?
For SMU, I'll take that side first. I think that it was a really big win for that resume to just sort of solidify that they are on the right side of the bubble. They don't have too much to worry about, like you said, pending a meltdown. Now, if they lose out, of course you're going to be in danger. That's always the case here, no matter where you sit on the bracket, really, unless you're one of those top teams. But for SMU, they create a little bit of cushion for themselves on what I said before is a little bit of a weak bubble. So now they've got some games between them and an extra quad one win on their resume that they're going to be able to point to. So I think it was really big for them in just kind of locking themselves in. Now you've got a little bit of a sigh of relief, a little bit of comfort that you can feel. Now you don't want to go in too comfortable, but sometimes you can play a little bit more freely when you're not real tight thinking about that bubble conversation, thinking we have to go 2 games deep in the conference tournament. That's the only way we're going to make it. Now, I think you can kind of approach each game and just try to face it individually and not have to worry as much about the grand picture and how it impacts your postseason chances. On the other side, though, for Louisville, I wouldn't be sounding alarms because at the end of the day, you lost a road game in the conference against a team that looks the part of an NCAA tournament roster. So it's not the end of the world. This is not a Louisville team that's been up in, like some thought maybe coming into the season they would be, a top 10, a top 5 team that should be mowing through the rest of the conference. That's just not what they've been to this point. They've been really good. We've seen really good flashes of what they can be, but the consistency just hasn't been there night in, night out in the performance by the team. We've seen, obviously, Mikael Brown having a big run down the stretch of this season with some big-time performances is going to be huge for them, but how can they get those big performances and also get what they need on the defensive end of the floor, get what they need from the surrounding role players? Can they get big performances from Brown and Conwell? That is obviously going to lead to a lot of wins if you can get both of them rolling at the same time. So what is it that's going to take? How do we pull together some of these really good traits that they have and get them consistently happening at the same time?
SMU's backcourt, it seems like the group that when you get into the NCAA tournament, you're scared of, right? Those guys can make shots. They're athletic. They are veteran players. And at the same time, we've seen some of the inconsistencies and where they were before this Louisville game. But how do you quantify that type of a confidence when, top 25, getting over that hump in a sense to beat a team like Louisville that has been rolling in a sense? And giving that confidence for you to then go on to the ACC tournament here in a couple weeks and keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, I don't think that guard duo lacks any confidence. That's for sure. Between Boopy and Jaron Pierre, that is the type of backcourt that you want heading into March Madness. Like you said, they're veterans. They're guys who have seen it in a postseason format. They've seen it at multiple stops now for both of them. Transfers who came in, are they the kind of projectable pros? Not necessarily, but they are really, really good guards who understand their role, who understand exactly how to get to their spots, and who have now started to figure out more and more as the season's gone on how to play off of each other. And that has been huge for this team. I think that backcourt, we know that the front court's got some punch to it as well. Really like some of the things that they've done, but that backcourt is the engine. And as we know in March Madness, many times you'll see a star emerge out of nowhere, sometimes multiple off of one team when they get hot. And a lot of times it's those guards, those veteran guards who are kind of stringing together and pulling off of that experience that they have.
And we'll get you out of here on this. The team in the ACC, your pick of which one has the most really at stake here, over the next week or so in conference play or just on their schedule, because Michigan, Duke this weekend is that the biggest opportunity here for the Blue Devils to just lock in a number 1 overall seed?
Yeah, I think that Duke has the most to gain here with the potential for a number 1 overall seed. Obviously, that is in itself a big accomplishment, something that goes down as part of history with each NCAA tournament. Who was the number 1 overall seed entering things? So that's a big opportunity for them as they face Michigan. Obviously, you would gain the head-to-head matchup. You would then have the same record as them. You would have more quad 1 wins, at least at this point in the season. So yes, I do think that Duke would likely jump into that number 1 spot in bracketology if they were to get a big weekend win against Michigan. But I'd say down the stretch of this season, I think the team with the most to win or lose is probably Virginia Tech. They're sitting on the wrong side of the bubble right now, but they're still in the mix. Like I said, a relatively weak bubble. Their record isn't impressive, but they need some big resume defining wins. If they could go out and get some big wins, that would be huge for them. It would be huge for the ACC to get another team into this field, huge for Mike Young, huge for everyone involved there if they were able to go out and pick up some big wins down the stretch of this season. Now, on the other side, though, if they can't get those, it's going to be another season where Virginia Tech lands just on the wrong side of things and can look at it and only count a handful of teams between them and the NCAA tournament bubble.
James Fletcher, always a good time talking ACC hoops with you in bracketology. We will see you next week, I'm sure.
All right. Thanks for having me.
There he goes, James Fletcher joining us on All Access AM. And we are really excited now to welcome in our next guest, right from one guest to the other, right from one sport to the other, going really basketball to football for the most part here as we look back now on Louisville's offseason. And we'll maybe touch a little bit on hoops there with Alexis Cubit of the Courier Journal. Alexis, thanks so much for joining us this morning. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having Billy. I am doing great. It was 70 degrees here yesterday, so I'm wonderful.
We've all thawed out, but Louisville has certainly heated up in the transfer portal this offseason. And Jeff Brohm building up this 2026 roster, for really that push for an ACC championship. He's back at his alma mater and looking to take it to the next level. But a lot of changes for this Cardinals team. As a high-level overview, what has the really kind of maybe end of this season with some of the job rumors all the way through this transfer portal and contract talks with Louisville been like covering that Louisville program right now?
No, it's been insane because I don't even know who's going to be here in a couple weeks for spring football. I mean, you talk about the portal and, programs like Michigan trying to hire Jeff away, but then you lose your defensive coordinator, you lose your D-line coach, you lose your tight ends coach. Now recently you lose your O-line coach. It's just been so much of an overhaul, with losing that 4 or 5 of your 9 position coaches. And then this addition of a bunch of defensive assistants that don't really have like specific positions. And then, you get to the portal and those additions and some of the losses that they've had. So no, I don't even know what an off season in football actually looks like, because it seems like there's always something happening within the sport.
I was going to say there is just no off season. My wife makes so much fun of me when I say, this month is going to quiet down, I'm sure. But no, we don't get that. Our hope can only be for February to be maybe a little quiet. July too. But nonetheless, Louisville getting ready to get after it in spring football with a new quarterback, Lincoln Kienholz. And Jeff Brohm did speak with you guys, around that National Signing Day-ish timeframe. What were your takeaways hearing maybe a little bit more about the new signal caller for the Cardinals?
Yeah, I think they kind of feel like he's a bit of a hidden gem. He's an extremely talented player from South Dakota. I actually did a story on him and was looking it up, and I believe he was one of only 2 top 300 24/7 sports recruits from South Dakota in the last 10 years. Obviously had some time there at Ohio State, won a national championship with them, didn't really play, but was behind some really good quarterbacks. And so I think he's going to be a little different in that he is more of a dual threat. And so you're going to see a lot more run plays is something that Brohm had mentioned that are, specifically designed for him. We got a little bit of that with Tyler Miller the past couple of years, but I think this is the quarterback that's actually going to really expand and not just be like the pocket passer that Jeff Brohm is known to put in the league.
Also averaged nearly 20 points per game on the basketball side of things in high school too. So really accomplished athlete there for Louisville, and he's got a ton of playmakers around him. Obviously, retaining Isaac Brown is fun, and that backfield that Louisville is going to have once again is impressive, especially if he can stay healthy. But they go out and add Trey Richardson. They add some other pieces around him, upgrade the offensive line. What was the work done on the offensive side, and what was your kind of overall take of? Okay, you had Miller Moss, you had some of the talent that they had, but they couldn't just punch through the ceiling at times offensively this year, and in part due to injuries.
Yeah. No, it was honestly a little frustrating to watch the offense sometimes because it was just like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
why did you do that? But again, they came into this season thinking they were going to have, year 2 with Isaac and Duke and that, two-headed, three-headed monster, if you count Keywan there. And then they just didn't have that because of the injuries. And even for some of Miller's struggles, he came in thinking he was going to have more of a help in the backfield more than he did at USC. So that definitely, obviously, in my opinion, played a part in some of those struggles. But when you look at this class, talk about offseason craziness. That was a 3-day, 4-day span where Isaac is like, I'm going to leave. And then it's like, LOL, JK, I'm staying now. And then called his own press conference to talk to media about that, him and his agent. Wild times, man, wild times. But no, I feel like they made some good moves. They feel one thing that's not talked about, tight end. I feel like they brought in 2 really good tight ends at a position that has not always been the most stable over the past 3 years. It's always been, a new starter, or they experience a lot of turnover with players leaving and maybe being a little young. But I thought they brought in some really good ones. Brody Foley being the one in particular that I'm thinking about with, NFL talent, was thought to possibly have entered the draft this year, but decided to stay in college for another year and now come to Louisville. And, bringing in Paul Petrino to kind of guide, not the official tight ends coach, but to lead the tight ends in that room. And, the Petrino name is famous in Louisville, obviously. And so, that's one thing I'm looking at. And they really didn't have to do much in the running backs room just because they brought back Isaac and Keywan. But I do think, making that addition there in addition to getting one or two from the high school ranks was key. So obviously they won't have Trey Richardson this spring because he's nursing an injury that was lingering from his time there at Vandy. But they've got some other guys that can step up and do some really good things. So it'll be interesting to see how they can kind of, I don't want to say rebuild, but just kind of maybe make amends for some of those offensive breakdowns and different things that we're not accustomed to expecting from a Jeff Brohm offense.
Well, and look, it seems like they're going to be able to lean on the defense a little bit here this season. I mean, the defensive line that they've invested in at Louisville is really impressive. Tyler Thompson goes there, and a bunch of teams across the country wanted him from North Carolina. And not only that, you get Lubin back, AJ Green back. That front is really impressive. Let's start there. How much did they focus on that group as a whole and making sure that was built up? And give us a little bit too on the interior of that defensive line. Is it matching the kind of star power that's on the edge?
Yeah, well, just to take a step back even further, to move Mark Ivy back to coaching D lines is huge. I mean, he was very instrumental in Yaya Diaby and the first 2 years of Ashton Gelati, who's only playing with the Chiefs. That was huge, I think. And then now to have him as the co-defensive coordinator, I think a lot of Mark Ivy. I think he's a really underrated coach that I think has head coach potential one day, and just the way that players respond to him and what he's been able to do at every position he coaches, because then he goes and coaches the linebackers and they have success and are one of the most consistent positions over the past couple of years. But no, I mean, I think this D-line has a lot of really good potential, like you mentioned, Clev and Tyler. And that's obviously, they're always going to prioritize the trenches, whether that's on offense or defense. And so I think they got a lot of really good pieces there to complement some of the losses that they've had. And I do expect them to be just as good, if not better, this season, not only with just the pieces that they've added, but also with that coaching switch. Well, not coaching switch. Obviously, Mark Hagan left, but just plugging Ivy into that spot.
The secondary, did they, help out there too? They add Cohen and Trieger to that mix. I mean, did they, I guess, check the boxes there as well defensively?
Yeah, I mean, safety is always weird because I feel like they never really have the depth that they want at that position, but they have guys that do enough to kind of make up for that. Losing 3 of your 4 starting defensive backs is not ideal.
No.
But again, like you mentioned, Cohen, a bunch of other guys. I mean, getting Tayon Holloway back was really big. Yeah, that was definitely, it had to be, an important position. And, they still have some younger guys that are coming up in the ranks in the DB room in the secondary, but I think it was very important for them to make those additions in the cornerback room. And even, getting somebody like Ben Perry back, is that like star hybrid kind of position there who, spent, was that a year or two? I don't even know what year it is, a year or two at Louisville before he went to UCLA, and that obviously didn't work out. And so now he's back. So it's kind of like you have a new player, but not really, just because he is familiar with the system, had a year away, and he'll be on his 3rd position coach because obviously with Ron English leaving, now Brandon Sharp is been elevated and promoted to the safeties coach. So safety will definitely be a room that there's going to be a lot of questions. With the corners, I feel like it's a little bit more stable just because you have Steve Ellis back and you see what he's been able to do with, Jarvis Brownlee and Quincy Riley and putting those guys in the leagues, and even guys from that predate his time at Louisville. So, even though Tayon is the only experienced returner from the secondary, I do think that at least for the corners, having Steve Ellis back will provide some stability and getting some of those other guys along, because I do expect that to be a good part of this defense and to be hopefully a strength in improving on how they defend the pass, because they did improve in that area last year from 2 years ago. So you just want to kind of see those incremental steps continue to be taken.
A top 10 portal class for Louisville, according to On3's rankings. Jeff Brohm, let's go back to, I guess, all of the jobs and the this and the what he needs to build Louisville into this program that he envisions it to go capture a national championship. How much of this offseason and the transfer portal success is a doubling down of Louisville on the football side of things, or is this just a plan coming together? Is kind of what steps are they taking to elevate, like we've seen at Virginia Tech and some of those programs that have reinvested in the transfer portal in a sense?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is putting together a super team, if you will, of recruiting department. I mean, they added, 2 new positions to that. So it's not just, well, technically 3 in last year's calendar year, because you brought in Vince in the summertime, and then 2 new positions fairly recently over the last, 3 or 4 months, something like that. So, I mean, that's commitment right there. So it's not necessarily right away where you're saying like, okay, we're just going to throw a bag at the football program to go get players, but we're going to actually put people in place that, know what they're talking about and know what makes sense, as far as we're not going to go pay a 3rd string, offensive lineman $1.5 million, whereas if they don't have all of those resources, they might think that's worth it. So now having an actual team together that can say, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to target. They can have an overall evaluation where it's more perspectives, and where it kind of frees Jeff up to really just coach, because that's honestly like just what he loves to do. I mean, I don't think he really cares to get caught up in all that other stuff. He's just like, hey, I've got people for that. So I definitely think he delegates from that perspective and enjoys being able to do that. And so with that now, he's got people around that he trusts, one of which Nate Dennison, who was at Purdue with him, brought him here. And then Vince brought one of his guys from Kentucky, Chase, to come in. So it's a group of guys that are trusted within the room, or within the program rather, to be able to, make those decisions and find the right pieces and evaluate the roster and see what's of most importance. And then you go to, okay, now that we have this team together, what do y'all need? And I do believe that, at least from what I've gathered, there is a sense of commitment into giving the program what they need. I mean, they're not going to back a Brinks truck in at this point. I don't know if the bourbon money is that good, but they have enough to where they feel like, they're having those conversations with athletic director Josh Hearns, like, hey, here's how much we need to build, a potential national championship roster. And I do believe that there is buy-in and there are resources that Josh is putting in and giving Jeff and Vince and those guys to be able to, be competitive. Because, I mean, I think you mentioned it, like, they've been right there every single year for Brohm. It's just one of those weird losses. It was Pitt, it was Stanford. I mean, this year it was a little bit of a snowball. So it was a few programs, including SMU. But it's always been like that one step. So, maybe now with just a little different personnel and building up that roster, they can finally get over that hump to, just get into the CFP and then see what happens from there, especially with, the expansion has happened for a couple years now. It's been in place. So just get in the top 12, man. And I mean, you see what Miami did when they just kind of got in, and it's one of those things where, like with everything, with the postseason, baseball, basketball, whatever, just get in. That's the goal, is to just get there and then have the ball kind of roll your way, or anything can happen at that point.
We'll end on this. What gives you some confidence that Louisville is going to accomplish that and get into the playoff? And then what makes you sit there and say, I just don't know if they're going to get it done this year?
Yeah. I think the defense still is the thing where I'm like, okay, they can do this. I thought they had a very good defense last year. It wasn't perfect, of course, because nobody ever is, but I felt like they had enough to be a CFP contending team. It was just, the offense. I laugh when people talk about the Virginia game that went into overtime, because they say, oh, the defense gave up a touchdown and they lost the game in overtime. But I'm thinking, okay, so let's go back and actually unpack this for a second, because they gave up 7 points. No, was it 7? I don't even know if it was 7 points in regulation. But you can't have pick sixes and fumble returns for touchdowns and expect your defense to overcome that in a way if they're consistently getting stops and you're not scoring. So the other way around, you're giving the team the ball to score. So no, I definitely felt like the defense would be the thing that gives me confidence for them to be able to take that next step and to make some more history. The pause would just be, those trap games, man. It's always something. I thought last year with Tyler Shuck, I felt like that was a really, really good team. They had a very difficult schedule, but I felt like that was a team that, if things kind of moved their way a little good, they could, make the college football playoffs. So it's just eliminating that. I don't know if it's it's a Lent season, sackcloth and ashes kind of thing, where they just need some more prayer, or like a cultural, whatever. But they just got to avoid that trap game, whatever that may look like.
Alexis, we really appreciate all the time. Looking forward to checking in with you around spring football and seeing what the Cardinals look like out there in practice.
All right. Thanks, Billy. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Alexis Cubit, joining us of the Courier Journal, covering Louisville football and basketball and beyond. We appreciate her so much for her time on this Thursday morning. Look, let's wrap up the show with this, guys. First of all, do want to remind you guys, yes, aviation. Alexis knows what she's talking about. Great input. She is sharp, and that's why we love having her on. Like I said over the last couple of weeks, we're trying to hit just about every ACC team we can during February, ahead of spring ball, however you want to match it up to the start of spring ball. We're going to try to take a peek at every single ACC school. And of course, we appreciate all of our friends that join us on the show. And Alexis is great. Do want to say we also appreciate, as the weekend nears, everyone, we appreciate free shipping. And you get free shipping with our friends at Socorro Tequila. Click the link in the episode description, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify. The link is right below this episode. And you go to SocorroTequila.com and you get free shipping on 3 bottles. So you can try the Añejo, the Blanco, the Reposado. Try their award-winning tequila today, and you don't even have to go to the store and search for it. It could be delivered right to your door. I think I got mine in like 3 days, really quick. Shipping there from our friends at Socorro Tequila. And again, it's free shipping when you order 3 bottles or more. You might as well try it. It's award-winning. It's agave yeast and water, and they just do an incredible job with their tequila. So we're proud to partner with them. Make sure you start off your weekend right with our friends at Socorro. If you're flying American Airlines, that is their tequila on their flight as well. So you can try that there. I do want to say we have a really fun weekend of ACC basketball this weekend as well. So make sure you guys enjoy that. Let's rapid fire here. Look at the games. Wake Forest at Virginia Tech, 11 a.m. Central Time on ACC Network. Florida State at Clemson. Tigers looking to bounce back, 11 a.m. Central on the CW. North Carolina at Syracuse, a nooner on ABC. So a big one there in that kind of traditional basketball power matchup. We'll see how UNC looks against a Syracuse team that got beaten up pretty good by Duke on Monday night. Miami at Virginia, a major game here for the Hurricanes and Jay Lucas to improve their NCAA tournament positioning. That one set for 1 p.m. Central on ESPN2. Notre Dame at Pitt, 1 p.m. ACC Network. Georgia Tech at Louisville. Cards looking to bounce back at 1:15 p.m. Central on the CW. Boston College comes all the way down to SMU, 3 p.m. Central ACC Network. Then you get Stanford at Cal. Rivalry matchup at 5 p.m. on ACC Network. Michigan at Duke, Michigan versus Duke in our nation's capital at Capital One Arena, 5:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Appointment viewing. Can't wait. Really excited to watch that one as 2 of the best teams in college basketball duke it out. Sorry, everyone. For really what could very well be the determining factor for who's the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. So tons of ACC hoops to get to this weekend. We're excited to be back with you guys Monday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, recapping another wild weekend of ACC hoops. I'm sure. Look, whenever we ask for the quiet, they deliver the crazy. And we hope you guys deliver a little click of the button, the subscribe button to our YouTube channel, All Access AM. We appreciate all the interaction in the chat. Thanks, Jerry and Aviation, for chiming in the chat throughout the show. I really appreciate all of you guys who support the channel. And thanks so much for watching and listening. I'm Billy Embody. We'll catch you guys Monday on All Access AM.